Hey Islanders, and welcome to episode 35 of the Camano Voice. On this episode, I speak to the founder, producer, and director of the Camano Island Radio Theater. Please welcome Ed Bednarczyk. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. On this episode, I got to speak to Ed Bednarczyk, who started the Camano Island Radio Theater, but has a whole history in voice acting, as well as a 34-long career with United Airlines. On top of that, he's also been very influential in our community in starting some other projects, such as the Camano Soapbox Derby. He worked with Randy Hegel and some others on that project. And he's always been very active in the community, whether that's through the chamber or different events. I know that in the last Chili Chowder Cook-Off that we had, he was the MC for the night. So anyways, had a great time with him. You actually get to hear a little bit of his voiceover acting in this podcast, so that was really fun to witness. As well as some of the big projects that he's worked on. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Ed Bednarczyk. Hey Islanders, it's Brandon with the Camano Voice, and on this episode, I get to speak to the founder, producer, and director of the Camano Island Radio Theater. Welcome, Ed Bednarczyk.
Hey, thanks, Brandon. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this. Before we get started on everything, tell us a little bit about Ed.
Well, let's see. I am from Connecticut. I was born in New Haven, Connecticut, and that's actually where my acting career started, was in Connecticut. First in front of my family in the living room. And that's probably the best audience you can ever have, because they're going to tell you if it was good or bad. But yeah, and I was in a show, I was probably 10 years old, and I did some acrobatic work prior to that, and then I was in a show at the Goodspeed Opera House in Peter Pan, the musical Peter Pan, and I played one of the Lost Boys, and it was a professional cast out of New York. The Goodspeed Opera House is on the banks of the Connecticut River, and for those listeners out there, I encourage you to look it up and check out the Goodspeed Opera House in East Haddam, Connecticut. It's on the banks of the Connecticut River, old Victorian theater, beautiful, and that is where Annie was first produced before it went to Broadway.
Really?
And the producer,
very cool.
the producer of Peter Pan that I was in, has produced many, many musicals. His name is Michael Paul Price, and he was the first producer, Michael Paul Price, first producer of Annie before it went to Broadway. And then when it went to Broadway, they asked Michael to bring it to Broadway, and he said, "No, my home is here at the Goodspeed." And that's a vote of confidence in his abilities and his passion for what he was doing. But so I was on stage there for a couple of weeks. Nancy Dussault, who was on Too Close for Comfort, a sitcom back in the 80s, I think, and she was Peter Pan in it. And so it was just great. And Peter Foy, who was the original guy who did the flying for Mary Martin on Broadway, for those seniors out there that remember Mary Martin on Broadway back in the 50s, he was the guy who flew Mary Martin on Broadway, and he developed a company called the Foy Brothers, and they do, to this day, the Foy Brothers do all the flying on all the shows in Broadway, and big shows like probably, Garth Brooks flying across Texas Stadium when he did that in the 90s, I think it was. They probably did that. I mean, they're that extreme.
Got it.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Oh, very cool. So they were kind of like the pioneers of people flying in plays.
Yeah, and I got to meet Peter Foy. He was the one who flew our show, and he was the founder of all that, so it was really cool.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when was that then?
That show was in 1967. I know I don't look that old. No, just kidding. That was, I think, 1967. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was cool. So that's where my acting career started, and then I moved to Florida after that, and went to college down there, and I was in some drama in school at college, and then graduated college, became a flight attendant for United Airlines. I had a 34-year career at United Airlines.
Really?
As a flight attendant, and that's where I met my wife. She had a 25-year career there, and we flew all over the place and worked a lot together, she and I. And so that was cool. And then I lived in the D.C. area for quite a while, and that's where I started really, getting into acting and doing on-camera work, and also that's where my voiceover career started as well. My first voiceover demo was on a cassette.
Okay.
So,
oh, very cool.
Yeah, a little age myself
Throwback.
there. Yeah, throwback. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. So then you were into the arts pretty early on with drama or theater and stuff like that.
I was.
When you went to Florida, what did you study then?
I studied journalism.
Okay.
I was at the University of Florida studying journalism and wanted to go to law school, and then got the job with United back then and never looked back. And it was a 34-year career. I always say the best part of that career at United was meeting my wife. So,
Good answer.
That was a great benefit. But yeah, in Florida, as I said, went to high school, college down there, and my family's, some of my family's still down there. My brother's there, and then with the airline job, lived in multiple states, covering that career. Met my wife in Colorado, and then we moved to Florida for a while, and then that's my connection to the Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
So we moved up to D.C. We were flying out of there for a while, and then she says, how would you like to move to Seattle? And I said, wow. I said, I would love to be up in the Pacific Northwest. I would come out here on vacations since the early 80s with her, and then I just fell in love with the area. And she has friends and her cousins up on Friday Harbor.
Oh, okay.
So up in
nice.
San Juan, yeah. And I just, of course, should have bought land back then, but but I couldn't believe back then even how cheap it was. But so then we were living in Renton, and for a while. We went back to D.C. and then moved out here and lived in Renton for about 3 years. My wife's mom was there, and we stayed with her for a while. And then we kind of were looking for a place in a waterfront community,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. So then, so you were with United for the 34 years? 34
years, yeah.
So then I'm just kind of curious because I know that a lot of people, I assume a lot of people end up taking a job like that, in process of getting into another career or maybe becoming a flight pilot.
Yeah.
What was it that kind of drew you to stay with them for that long? That's a lot of time.
Well, it was the best full-time, part-time job you could ever have because your scheduling there is, you're working 16, 17 days a month. Sometimes less. And as my career, further into my career when I had more seniority, I was working 12 days, 14 days a month, and I still did my voiceover work and other things while I had the aviation career at United. So I always had a second and third job, and I always did something else, from working at a resort, swimming pools at resorts, to before I met my wife, and then doing the acting, and then the voiceover work. I've done a bunch of stuff, and I've worked for. I've given my time to a lot of nonprofits too, on the fundraising side of things and raising money for nonprofits.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. So then, when did you start doing the voiceover acting then during that career?
Yeah, it was in the 90s. Mid-90s is when I did, when I started it, because I already had agents representing me on the acting side, and so I thought, well, I should look into doing some voiceover work because I played around a lot with impersonations and different, funny character voices, and I thought, well, this would be kind of cool. And so I already had agents, so I went out to get a demo. I cut a demo tape, which was a couple of minutes long on cassette for an audio demo, and my agents took the demo and they started marketing me as a voiceover actor.
Okay, so then just out of curiosity, because we've all gone on those flights where like the flight attendant like kind of makes a show out of it.
Yeah.
Did you get any practice during that time on your voice acting?
Tons of it, because I was as a purser, as the chief purser on a flight. You make all the announcements and all of that. So people would deplane and they'd say, you have a nice voice. You should get into like radio or something. And so, I said, well, I already do. I already am doing it. So it was kind of funny. But I would do some impersonations, like just to have fun with the crowd. I like back then I did when Ronald Reagan was in office, and I'd say, and my wife's name is Nancy. So I'd say, Nancy and I are glad to, be here on your flight today, serving you to Washington, D.C. And, yes, I've come out of retirement to, do this as a flight attendant. Yes, that's it. So I would do things like that and crack the crowd up and just have some fun and loosen it up there, because, it can be a tough audience or a good one, but typically they all like it and laugh.
Yeah.
And then I'd get to the back and I'd say, ladies and gentlemen, this here is Roy, your flight attendant here in the back, and I'm going to explain the breakfast menu to you on a flight today to D.C. So listen up for your choices. Now, if your first choice isn't available, we got a second choice for you. So do stuff like that just to have fun. So, yeah, I was practicing all the time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and getting paid for it.
Yeah, there you go. That's
great.
The best way to practice.
It was great, yeah.
Very cool. So, real quick, I want to touch on, you said you already had agents for your acting career. Mm-hmm. What were you doing? I know you did some stuff at the opera. What else were you doing then? Yeah,
at the Goodspeed Opera House. That was early on. And then I was doing a lot of TV commercial work from Philadelphia down to D.C. So that whole corridor there, and I would literally drive. We were living in Virginia at the time, and I would drive up to Philadelphia for one quick audition in one day and drive back 4 hours or so each way. It was really worth my time, because I booked quite a few commercials up there and on-camera things. And so that was really a lot of fun. I enjoyed it very much. And I did a lot of theater work in Virginia as well. I was in the musical Barnum. I played P.T. Barnum in the musical Barnum.
Okay.
And I always say that, what's his name that played P.T. Barnum in the movie?
Hugh Jackman?
Hugh Jackman's got nothing. No, I'm just kidding. So I did that, and I was in another show called Witness for the Prosecution, and that was really fun. I played Sir Wilfrid in that, and then some other shows. But yeah, it was just a fun thing doing live theater. But unfortunately, live theater is a lot of work, and doesn't pay a lot of money.
Nope.
And so unless you're on Broadway and you're doing all of that, which I was not on Broadway, but I would love to have been. But
yeah,
and I love the work. I love acting. Love getting up in front of a crowd. It's my wheelhouse.
Yeah, that's very cool. So, what was your favorite part that you've gotten to play in a play?
Oh, P.T. Barnum.
For sure.
Yeah. If you're familiar with Music Man, Harold Hill, the character in Music Man, it's a very similar character in that P.T. Barnum, bigger than life, project a bigger than life character on stage in front of all these people. And I was not a singer, but I auditioned for a bit part that had one little song in it. And I came out of the audition, and I said to my wife, who was waiting there, and she is a musician, classically trained, all of that. And I came out of the audition. She said, well, how'd you do? And I said, well, I think they're looking at me for the lead role. She said, what? Are you kidding? Do you realize how much music is in there? So she wanted to see all the charts of all the music. And she said to the director, I don't know how he can do this. He's not a singer. He can sing, but he's not a trained singer. So I always like a good challenge. And so I had about 4 months of coaching between my wife and another person who was the music director at our church there, who's has a degree in music and voice and all of that. So between the two of them, I had some excellent training and sang in front of a full orchestra. And so for not ever having sung before on a stage, to be singing in front of a full orchestra was really fun. It was an adrenaline rush.
I'm sure.
Yeah, especially when I came in on the wrong verse on one song, and I thought the conductor was going to fall out of the pit, but but it was fun. It was great. Yeah, P.T. Barnum was a great character to play.
Very cool.
Yeah. So that was fun.
Cool. So then, So you started getting your voice acting tape, cassette sent around.
Right.
What was your first gig with that?
Wow. My first gig with that, that's a good question. I don't really remember what my first gig was. But I did a lot of corporate things back then, and commercial work. So it was a mix of stuff. I don't know. I don't remember. Yeah, it was such a long time ago.
Yeah.
But
So what were some of your early projects you worked on then?
Oh, I did a lot of training work. Today they call it e-learning, and so online learning. And then I did some local commercial work. I did some voice work for State Farm. I did some character voicing for some commercials. Again, mostly local commercials out there. When my voiceover work expanded when I came out here, then I was getting into bigger things that were like video games and for Nintendo and different companies and I have my own home studio.
Okay.
So graduating from I didn't really answer your question very well as far as my first early on work, but I looked at it this way. I was kind of in the test market, so to speak, with that career back then, and perfecting and trying to find my signature voice, because everybody has a signature voice.
Okay.
And a lot of people think in voice acting, they think it's just being on the radio, tonight on an all new, here's our greatest hits lineup. Well, that really isn't voiceover. It's just being a DJ. And being a voice artist, you have to be as versatile as possible to be able to land multiple roles. And so essentially you're acting with your voice.
Yeah.
So when you see a car going down the road, the all new Ford Escape, that kind of thing. Or Arby's, what are you eating today? And so I've done spots for them and Nike, and I've done training for the nuclear submarine program. I've narrated 4 courseware training programs for them. That's real technical. Probably the most demanding work I do is that kind of work, because you have to be so accurate with pronunciations and acronym pronunciations and things. But I love the character voicing. I've done video work, video game work for Nintendo and Ascension.
I don't know if you're allowed to say it or not, but like as far as video game work, what type of do you have? Can you list the video games that you worked on?
Absolutely. I did probably the biggest one I've done. 2 of the biggest ones I've done. One was Aeon Ascension, which is a social network game. It's probably equal to or close to World of Warcraft for those that are out there in the social gaming circles. And the other one I did, a big one, was Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn.
Really?
Yeah, and that's the sequel to Fire Emblem. And, and I didn't know anything about these games because I'm not a gamer. But I was down in the studio and recording in Seattle for that, and all the writers are, young people like yourself. They're there and they're explaining the characters and telling you where these characters live, where they're from, where they were born, and as if they really existed, because that's how they wrote it. They're passionate about the characters and the character development, so they want to project as much to the characters to you as possible, so you can portray that character in how they foresee it. And so that's really exciting. And so then we did a Japanese version of the game, and I did all of the English version. I shouldn't say we did the English version, but it was all in Japanese on the screen to me, so I could see all the animation and trying to line up, with the animation, with the voice movement and all of that, which was really cool. And when I first put the headphones on, I thought, oh my gosh, I think they think I speak Japanese. So I took the headphones on. I said, you guys know I don't speak Japanese, right? They said, no, that's fine. We're working on the American version of the English version. I said, oh, okay. So I voiced it. And then American Animation Studios, I think they're out in Prosser, Washington. I've done some work for them, some historical videos and animation. But I love animation probably pretty much more than anything, because you can have more creative freedom and liberty to go off script and do some ad-libbing, which I love to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. So then, has that just come over time as far as ad-libbing and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, I've been an ad-libber my whole life. Okay. Yeah, in front of my family, I could just go off, and do things, and it just came naturally to me. I think where I got most of that was from my dad. He was a very funny guy, unfortunately not with us any longer, but he is probably one of the few people I know that would drive 10 miles out of his way to pull a 1-minute joke on someone. So anyway, yeah, I learned a lot of my humorous skills and things like that from him.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So then, so how did you end up actually finding out about Camano when you guys were down in Renton?
Yeah, well, my wife is from Minnesota originally, a little town called Alexandria, Minnesota, up there in the north country there. And she, when she was like 3, I think, moved out here to Seattle and Spokane and then Seattle. And she grew up out here and went to high school, went to elementary school and high school and college and everything out here. And so all of her friends and family is out here, and at the time they were when we first moved out here. So she said, "How'd you like to move to Seattle?" Okay, great. So we did. We moved out here in 2000, and it was really cool staying in Renton for like 3 years. And we thought, well, we want to look around for a nice community because we left a really nice community in Virginia, and we were really involved in our community, and we wanted a community similar to that, to where we, it was big enough to have things to do and fun things to do, but a community we could get involved in. And we saw this. We were on the highway on 95. That's on the East Coast, on I-5, and then we saw it on the map, and we said, "What's that? Camano Island? Let's check it out." And we said, "It looks like there's a bridge or a causeway or something." So we got off the freeway and drove over here, and we were just blown away. And this was in 2006.
Okay.
And and so we came out here and loved it. And I ended up, so then we moved here. We decided to move here. We both got our real estate license at the time.
Okay.
And both got on with Windermere. With Randy and Marla Hegel here
very
in
cool.
the community.
Okay.
And so we got involved in real estate, and I was a realtor here for several years. But again, always doing something else. So at one time, I was a realtor, I was a flight attendant for United, and I was also doing my voice work.
Okay.
I had no time to sleep. And so it was really fun. And I think that anything you do in life, everything helps the next thing you do.
Yeah.
And so I've always, one day, I've always thought that if you diversify your life, it's a better life. And, and some people get caught in a trap, and unfortunately they're stuck maybe. And I always say to people like that, if you're stuck, you can unstuck by just making it happen, And so I did, and I just loved everything I did. And then I wound down the real estate to where I still have my license, but I do referrals every now and then for people. So if anybody's out there needing a realtor, let me know. But I'm still with Windermere. My license is here. But my full-time work is my voiceover work. I retired from United Airlines in 2013, I think it was.
Okay.
And so, and said goodbye. They offered a buyout, and I took that and left after 34 years. And it was time to go. It was, changing industry, and after 9/11, there were so many rules and regulations.
Yeah.
It really changed the industry a lot. I went through a United Airlines went bankrupt, and it was a big, long, drawn-out bankruptcy process, and went through the corporate America thing with a big company going bankrupt and the survivability of that. And I did survive as well as many others did, but some people got hurt with the bankruptcy of United. But it's a fact. I think most airlines have probably gone through one or two.
Yeah.
And some of them have surfaced all the better because of it. And United, I think, is certainly one that's, surfaced and doing well. So I still kept my voiceover career because it's my passion. And they say if you find something you're passionate about, and Steve Jobs was big on this, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
And so I still work, but I some days it's work, but for the most part, I love everything about it, and it's just when a client is a little slow to pay, I don't like that very much.
It's the admin side.
Yeah, that's right, the admin side. But I love getting the work as well. And I have agents that represent me throughout the country. I have several talent agents that represent me. But then I also get work on my own. Locally, I've been the voice of Coastal Community Bank for the last 5 years.
Oh, very cool.
So their big line is Coastal Community Bank, helping small business fight to win. So if you hear me on TV or radio around doing the Coastal Community Bank spots, that's me. So
very cool.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful bank, and to be representing a brand like that really cares about the community is wonderful, because they really do. They truly are a community bank, and I'm really proud to be. To say that I am their voice, which is really nice.
Yeah. Well, and so I actually got to interview Myra and Laura.
Oh, Laura Byers, sure. And Myra. Yeah, Reinhardt.
Yep, on a previous podcast. And full disclosure, we do bank with them, but they have, it was great talking with them.
Yeah.
And our experience with them has always been fantastic. They're really on top of everything. So.
They are, and I bank with them as well now. I didn't before.
Okay.
but when I was hired to do their voiceover work 5 years ago, I said to Laura Byers, I said, I should probably, and to Myra, I said, I should probably get an account here. So we closed out our other bank, and we've been with them ever since, and we just are thrilled. Their customer service is off the charts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you've been doing the voiceover. What's the name of your voiceover company?
Voiceover.studio.
Okay.
I've got my shirt on for you today. So, it's voiceover.studio, and that's how anybody can find me. And I have a website, and if people are interested in hearing more about the work I do, or and clicking on some of the things I've done, some video work and my audio demo, it's on there. My second demo was a CD, and my other demo now is just no CD. It's just nobody has CDs anymore.
Look how far you've come.
I know, right, yeah. But at least I didn't start with 8-track.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because you said cassette. I'm like, so you skipped a few.
There right.
Okay, so then how did you get started with how did you start Camano Island Radio Theater then?
Yeah, well, Camano Island Radio Theater, because I've been in the voice business, and I always wanted to do it. And Alan Webb was a realtor here on the island, and he has a degree in theater, and he and I were talking about it years ago when we were in the office, and I got to find out he had a degree in theater, and he said, yeah, we should put something together. Well, I said, okay, great. And then when I did it, he got busy with other things and couldn't join me, and that was unfortunate. I wish he could have, because it was our original idea. And so I ran with it and formed a group. We're all, there's about 8 of us in the group, and that includes our sound effects person. And we do pure 1940s old-time radio theater, just like you would hear on the radio, driving in your car or being at home in the 40s. Some people didn't have cars, so they stayed at home, didn't have TVs, and listened to radio. I think it's really great to see a rebirth of that, not just in our community, but in the country. And it's really great. I love doing it. We've performed all over the island here. We've done a lot of fundraisers and give back to the community by donating the show. So we've raised several $1,000s for different nonprofits in the community.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and I'm on the board of directors. I'm the vice president on the Camano Schoolhouse Foundation.
Okay.
For those of you listening, it's a 1906 schoolhouse over on Orchid Road, right off of Chapman Road on the west side of Camano.
Yeah.
And that's the schoolhouse. It's all lit up at Christmas time now. And Holiday Lighting Northwest does a great job of sponsoring that. They light it all up professionally. They've done it a couple of years now. This is, I think, our 3rd or 4th year coming up.
Yeah.
And Greg Siccotti, the owner of Dapper Dan, and also owns Holiday Lighting Northwest, I always like to give them a plug, and they do gutter cleaning and roof cleaning and window cleaning, all that great stuff, and handyman services for your home at Dapper Dan. But they also have Holiday Lighting Northwest. So I approached him, and kind of getting off on a tangent here, but that's how we got the schoolhouse all lit up for the holidays, and so I'm glad to be on the board there. So we did a fundraiser just in January, another one, and raised some nice money for the schoolhouse through the radio theater performance. Yeah,
and I got to have Chuck on the president.
Right, Chuck Durland. Yeah,
yes. So I got to have him on the podcast, and
cool.
It was a lot of fun talking with him.
Yeah,
and, he's had a super long history with nonprofits and working in these different places. So
yeah, he puts in a lot of time for this community, and hats off to Chuck.
Yeah, for sure.
And his wife Isabel. She's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and we got to see them recently. The Camano Center had a Valentine's dance recently.
Oh, right.
So my
they
wife
love
and
to
I
dance.
went to that, and so got to see them there as well. So it's fun.
That's awesome.
Very cool. So then, are all of the shows that you guys have done for the radio theater, have those all been originals then?
All original, not our shows original, but original shows that were aired in the 40s.
Okay.
So they are classic radio shows. They're public domain, so we can use the scripts, and we stay pretty true to the script. We do a little bit of rewriting here and there to make it maybe a little more relevant, some of the jokes or something. But we typically do a mystery and a comedy all in one show.
Okay.
And we'll have an intermission between both shows. But it's really fun. The community loves it, and people keep asking, "Hey, when are you doing more? When are you doing more?" And it's to get everybody to commit to doing a show and working up new scripts, keeping it relevant. I think our next one's going to be at the Grange down south of the Elder Bay store.
Okay.
And we want to help them raise some money, so I think we'll do one in April or May there. But people can tune into our website, Camano Island Radio Theater.com, to learn more about the upcoming shows. And we'll be updating that fairly soon with some new show dates.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. That's something I want to be able to do in this year. I was talking to my wife about it, and she said basically if it's anything that would have been done like as a date in the 1940s or 50s, like that's something I'd want to do. So
oh yeah, it's fantastic because you can actually sit there and close your eyes, and it would be like you were listening to the radio and hearing the sound effects and all of that. It's just really really fun. We really try to bring the story to life like they did back then.
Yeah.
And we've toyed with doing It's a Wonderful Life over the holidays, and I think that would be a great radio show. I don't know if we're going to hit the mark this coming holiday season for Christmas, but it's something that's on our top of our list to want to do. So that would be fun. And have live music. And we do. We have a pianist. Andy Carr is our pianist. And he's local here. He's with the A-Town Big Band, and he also plays with, I think it's their band is called Swing Nuts.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's really a fun group too. But Andy's our piano player, and he does a great job.
Very cool.
Does a great job.
Yeah, well, it's fun because I grew up listening to so Focus on the Family had a lot of different. They would do some radio theaters. They did Adventures in Odyssey, which was like a kids program.
Oh yeah, right.
So I grew up listening to a lot of different stories on like cassettes and stuff like that.
Right.
But I think this sounds really cool. So
yeah, it is really cool. And I want to kind of dive into back when Nancy and I moved to the community. One thing I wanted to mention, for those listening, if you're sitting there wondering, well, you've moved to this community, if you're new in the community, or even if you've been here a long time, and if you're not involved in the community, I encourage everybody to get involved. Come up here to the marketplace and walk around, and come out for lunch or buy some croissants or do your gift shopping here, buy local, and I think it's really important to the the sustainability of the livelihoods we have in the community.
Yeah,
and you do a great job running the marketplace, and your dad Jeff is amazing. He just wonderful things here and has for years, and never has never given up. So I just look at businesses that don't give up on the community are awesome because, and more the reason why we shouldn't give up on those businesses. Mm-hmm. Because those businesses that are here and have been for a long time, especially the ones that have been here a long time, that haven't given up and haven't pulled up stakes. They've made it happen. They've developed it. They've gotten out into the community and done a lot of things to let people know what they're all about. And so I think we need to all support the businesses that support our communities. And when Nancy and I moved here, and encouraged the new businesses to get involved in the communities.
Yeah.
And because I just think it circles back to good things. And it's not always about dollars and cents. It's just about doing good for your community. When we moved here, I always say this: when you move to a community, you can choose to live in the community, or you can choose to be a part of it. And being a part of it covers living in it. And if you're a part of it, it comes back in so many ways, to you from rewards that you get by being a part of it, and it gets you out of the house. It allows you to have fun, and allows you to meet your neighbors, and so this community that we found outside of Virginia was perfect for us. Yeah, and I can't imagine living anywhere else. It's beautiful.
Yeah, very cool. Well, on top of that, I know that I just want to touch on briefly, because I think I missed, you did one in January, but you actually do like classes on voiceover acting as well,
I do, yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. I do voiceover workshops, and I started this a couple of years ago, and and the way it started was I would get people to ask, they would say, I've always wanted to do voiceover work. Okay, well, it's like anything. You want to learn to be a painter, start painting houses. Yeah. If you want to be a nurse, go to nursing school. If you want to run a business, learn some management. And so it's the same thing with voiceover. You have to train. Just because you have a voice and you can speak doesn't mean you know how to do voiceover. Because it is acting with your voice. And so improv is great training. Acting classes is great training. But I developed this workshop because people would come up to me and ask me that question. And sometimes I'd get a few people in the studio, and I'd give them free time, and I'd get them on mic, and I'd let them read for half an hour to an hour, and I would coach them a little bit. And I'd kind of do that to see where they were at. And then I'd give them feedback and some information to be able to practice on their own and get into the work of voiceover on their own by listening to commercials on TV, on radio, getting some books that I recommend to them. And then I'd see them on the street a month or two later. Hey, did you get those books? No, I never did. So finally I thought, well, I'm going to kind of pull back here on just giving my time. Especially if people aren't going to do anything with it, you know? And so I did. And I just thought, well, maybe I'll do some workshops. Mm-hmm. So I started the first one a couple of years ago, and I did it at Cama Beach in the Forest Room at the State Park at the Cama Beach, the big lodge there. They have a room off the side. And it was very successful. I had such a response to the ad that I put in the Crab Cracker, which I love the Crab Cracker, by the way. Yeah. And the Stanley Camano News. I love them both. And I put an ad in the Crab Cracker, and it was really awesome. And I had, I don't know, maybe 10 people in my first workshop. And it goes from like 10 in the morning till 5 or 4:30 in the afternoon. And so we go from about 10 to 12:30, then we break for lunch, and then I get everybody up on mic after lunch, and they go through some scripts that I select, and then I let them read through and record them, and then I let them read through it a second time after some coaching by me and see how they improve in the read after they've had a few minutes of coaching. And they typically improve on the second read, and little lights you can see going off in their head like, wow, with a little bit of coaching, I got better. Yeah. And so, we have those exercises that go in the second part of the day because everybody's kind of warmed up to each other and they're not as nervous. But it's just full. I give them so much information. They leave there full of information on what kind of gear to purchase, like the microphones we're talking on here today, to the audio editing programs, and then how to work on their own at first. But most importantly, how not to get ripped off in the business, because, as well as I do, there's always people in a business world that's they're trying to take advantage of somebody, and I always encourage them to take what I taught them in the workshop and really use the tools that I'm giving them so they don't go down a bad path in the business and get hurt financially by somebody trying to take their money and over-promising and under-delivering. And so especially in the acting business and that business, there's a lot of people preying on people. And that's P-R-E-Y, by the way, preying, not P-R-A-Y-ing on people. And there's a big difference. But so I've done a couple up in Bellingham, affiliated with a studio there that's affiliated with Western Washington University. And I worked with the head of their department, their audio engineering department. And so I actually hired one of their audio engineers, a student, paid him to engineer the session for me and then utilize their studios there. And I've done, I think, 4 or 5 so far in the area.
Okay.
And I'll be doing another one probably in either end of March or first part of April here on Camano Island. And so stay tuned. If anybody's interested, they can email me at ed@voiceover.studio. And I can, give them information there. And so I've really enjoyed doing it. I've never really been an instructor, so to speak. But I think if you know your business well enough that you can, do a fine job teaching, providing you're not afraid to get up and talk to people, which I'm not. And so it developed into this business now where I'm actually developing other workshops throughout the country.
Oh, very cool.
So my first one out of this area will be in Arizona, probably the third weekend of March. And then I'll take it and I'll do more in April. My goal is to do 30 workshops this year through different cities in the country: Madison, Wisconsin, Spokane, possibly Boston, Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, Houston, Spokane, and Boise, Idaho. And I'm really excited about doing it because I find that I love getting up and talking to people that are excited about getting into the business, but are kind of like a deer in the headlights of how to get in. It's not like being a singer or a musician where you can go take guitar lessons easily or trombone lessons or singing lessons.
Right.
Voiceover, it's like, well, how many places are around that teach voiceover? Not many.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a tight market in that regard. But you go to some of the major markets like New York and Chicago and LA, there's plenty of resources there. So my goal is to target areas and go into areas where and make it more accessible to people in areas where it's not readily available.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's another thing I'm very interested in, so I'll be hitting you up on that as well.
Oh, good. Yeah.
All right. Well, I like to end every interview with some rapid-fire questions.
Okay.
So the first one is, do you have a lesser-known or favorite location on Camano Island that you like to hang out?
A lesser-known favorite? Let me think about that. I love going down to the state parks. Everybody probably says that. Who wouldn't like going down there? But I love some of the trails. And I have a golden retriever. She's 4 years old.
Oh, okay.
So I take her out almost every day, and we're out running around somewhere. Wow. Brandon, you stumped me on that question. I've never been to Barnum Point. I've been near it, but it was closed until recently. Now it's open and accessible. Yeah. So that's going to be high on my list to get out to do. Really, I live on the water, and my beach in front of my house is probably my sanctuary place. Yeah. I love going out in my little crab boat, and I row out and go crabbing, and that's probably my lesser-known place for a lot of people, especially in the summer. You'll find me down there a lot.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Pretend you have a friend coming from out of town who hasn't been here before. What would their first day look like here?
Well, their first day would be we just had friends in, my best friend and his new girlfriend. They came in, and we actually came in here and got some croissants.
Oh, very cool. Thank you.
The almond croissants are amazing. And so we definitely took them here. And we took them to state parks, probably took them there first, and then cruised through the different neighborhoods and Madrona and over on the east side as well, and show them the diversity of the island.
Yeah.
And how cool it is, and more wooded down on the south end, and taking them around there, and of course the state parks, like I said, and but yeah, that's kind of the day, and I always recommend the zip lining. I mean, I'm afraid of heights, so I probably won't be doing it, but I also show them, and I wanted to mention this, the Soapbox Derby. I get back to the community. I've been, I was one of the people with Randy Hegel. He and I and a few others helped start that derby together.
Okay.
13 years ago now, and so I am very passionate about that. I've gone out and raised a lot of the sponsorship dollars for that race, and I'm excited that we have it here, and it's the largest soapbox derby west of the Mississippi, and the only one in the state of Washington, and so if anybody wants to talk to me about sponsorship, call me, ed@voiceover.studio.
Very cool.
But it's always Father's Day weekend. This year it's June 20th.
Okay.
And I encourage everybody in the community to come out. It's growing every year, and we had it in the streets of Stanwood for years, and then Randy and his wife Marla stepped up, and they bought the ranch out there on Arrowhead, and 20-acre facility now. I mean, that's $1 million facility out there, and that is just gorgeous and beautiful. And and it's all been by private money and sponsorship dollars.
Yeah, and they keep adding to it. They've added the axe throwing this last year.
That's right.
And,
Yep.
They hosted the chamber end of year barbecue out there.
Yes. Yes.
So it's just it is a neat location.
It is. And another thing for the people to do, and that's something I didn't take my friends to, was I didn't take them to the axe throwing, but when they come back out, that's a must. So I'll have to do that.
Very cool.
And of course, ice cream here at the market is phenomenal. So
yeah. Thank you. All right. So who is an interesting or fascinating person in this community that I should interview next?
Interesting or fascinating person in the community? Probably my wife and her music partner.
Very cool.
Heartstrings. They are very interesting. And I think it's really interesting how they met in high school and have stayed in touch through the years, except for a little bit, several years there that they didn't. And the good things that they're doing with their music in this community. I mean, they're really providing quality entertainment. But yeah, I think they're interesting. And Steve was a high school choir director and college choir director. Nancy has taught guitar, and she's also a professional organizer, which is an amazing story in itself. She's dealt with, all kinds of clients that, from people that gather too many items and they don't know how to get rid of them or what to do with them.
Or their kids gather too many items.
Or their kids gather too many items. But I think, I think they little biased there, but I think they would be interesting to interview. But yeah, I mean, I think there's so many people in this community that to interview, and I think focusing on the people that are doing a lot of good for the community, and there's so many. It's hard to name a name. Yeah, I mean, I know Randy Hegel does so much, and his wife, and they're just an amazing group of people. I don't know how they have the energy to do what they do, but they do.
Right.
So they don't give up. They keep going,
Yeah.
Their can-do spirit is great. And I think a lot of people on the island, their can-do spirit is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Really. I think we're a pretty incredible community, a standout community up here in the Pacific Northwest. And I think a lot more people are finding out about Camano Island.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
All right. Lastly, if you could have a message on a billboard on Camano Island right as you're driving on the island, what would that say? Make your first U-turn and make plans to move here. That's what I would say as they're driving off the island. Very cool.
Yeah, a community that cares, community that gives back, a community where you should be.
Yeah. That's actually really funny because most of the people, especially the old timers who have been here on Camano a long time, most of them say, thanks for visiting. See you later.
Yeah, exactly. I know. And you see, all of a sudden I'm driving down West Camano and I see all this land just the other day, just all being cleared. And I know they're, trying to find land to build more houses and things. But, but the good thing, though, is I think our growth is good here. I think we have good growth. I'm excited about the new high school, even though I don't have children, but I voted for it. I think you have to vote for things like that in the community for the community to sustain itself. Yeah. Because when, people move here or the people that live here want good quality education for their kids, well, you have to have a good facility to attract good teachers and to keep good teachers and treat them well too.
Yeah.
Amen to the good teachers.
Yes, for sure. They do a lot. I got to interview George Colby, who is...
Oh, George. I know George, yeah.
Yeah, he does so much for the students. His heart is just so much for them. And,
that's right.
It's great talking with him. So
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking time to talk with me today.
Brandon, thanks for having me on the show. You do such a great job with this, and I'm glad you're doing this because, I think everybody listening, you should tell more people about the podcast and get them to listen because this is a great resource for people to find out about the community where they live. And it might spark an interest for you to get involved in something that some of these people that Brandon is having come on the show are involved in, and maybe that's something that you'd want to be involved in too.
Yeah, very cool. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Ed Bednarczyk for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. And for more information on this episode, go to CamanoCommons.com/EP35. That's CamanoCommons.com/EP35. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.